will have in my, no, I have in my settings three, you see here, you have three desktops, so we can work together, and you can chat or you can raise your hand. I see the Teams chat and I see my slides. And if you have any questions, I can open also, and that's a good idea. I can do it in this moment. I can open my demo environment so that I also can show something. And if you have a lot of fun in my demo environment, and if you recognize something in my demo environment, demo environment is loading, some of these screenshots in Microsoft Learn, SC400, and some of the compliance Microsoft Learn courses you can do, and I recommended SC400, for example. This is a compliance Microsoft Learn sessions. Yeah, I created some of them. So that's a demo environment where I created these Microsoft Learn sessions. Okay, something to me, and I'm starting to talk about me and make a short introduction. My name is Raphael Kölner. I'm living in Cologne, so near my name, my surname is also my location. So I'm MVP. So thank you, Kalesh, for the introduction. I'm MVP for Office Apps and Services and also for Azure. And on the other side, I'm one of the 120. Currently, we are Microsoft Regional Directors. The MVP program is MVP program of the Community Program and Knowledge Program. The Regional Director program is a business program. So I'm one of the enterprise influencers here in Europe, and working with my own company. And I worked before for BDO, Freshfields, for some international companies. And then I said, okay, with my team, we found our own company. So we are specialized into compliance. So that's also why I'm here. It's my hobby. In my free time, it's compliance. In my work, it's compliance. So everything is is a topic compliance. So also in my communities here in Europe, we have the SharePoint Saturdays. We have Office 365 community, or I founded the Office 365 community, a compliance community, and an Azure community, Azure Meetup Cologne in my local town. And we are the biggest one in Europe, but to India, we are very small. We are only 2,000 people, but for Cologne or for an Azure community here, it's all fine. If you want to learn more about compliance, I founded some months before the Compliance Center in Germany, where I collected all of the compliance topics. So if you want to learn more about compliance, not only out of Microsoft, also AWS, Google, Telecom Cloud, so also other public and some other public clouds also about national and international regulations, you are here at the right place. And today we want to speak about Microsoft 365 and data privacy. And when we have a short look on the agenda, we have a short introduction. We're talking about requirements. And yes, I'm not only the technical geek. I'm also a technical geek, and I'm a law geek, if you can say this. So I study law, and I make also the IT stuff, and you see it a little bit here in my introduction slide. I'm the CEO or general manager of the Microsoft company and also of a law company. So I bring both together. So I'm very happy that I'm here, and we are talking about IT and also about law and also a little bit about India. I founded some requirements also in preparing the session. So we talked about these two topics into one. So let's start. I have only now 50 minutes, 45 minutes. So we will start. I have a lot of slides and I can talk a whole week about it. But let's start with introduction. Data privacy in Microsoft 365. And when you're looking at data privacy and see the last Ignite, for example, Jeff Teeper's session, and I talked with him 2 minutes before he's going on stage, we see often examples of Microsoft 365 when they talk about data privacy. The examples are Europe, and often the examples are Germany. And that's the same, not really the same, but nearly the same when we're talking in India also about data privacy. You have to look into the eyes of the tiger. And I love this picture because, that is a topic that is more and more important to the last years. It started with GDPR, the new regulation set in Europe, and GDPR is going and influencing a lot of laws, and also the India law, the law in Brazil, the law in the US, for example. With GDPR starting, we have the the Consumer Communication Compliance Act in California, which is a one-to-one copy of the GDPR, not really one-to-one, but nearly a one-to-one copy of GDPR. We have a new data privacy law in Brazil, which is also nearly a one-to-one copy. We have new law, for example, in Switzerland. We have new law in Japan, which is also nearly to the GDPR law. So GDPR and influencing a lot of other laws and also regulations and influencing worldwide. So I have also a lot of sessions in India. I have in this year a lot of I have in this year 6. Also in India with India companies, they want to inform and want to talk about data privacy with me. So yeah, have a look into the eyes of the tiger, into the topic of data privacy and GDPR and regulations around these topics. So let's have a look a little bit more. What means compliance? To be compliant with the rules. Yeah, to fulfill the rules, to fulfill more than data privacy. You have also IM and export regulations, especially in this moment with the war in Russia. We got more and more IM and export regulations, so it's not allowed, for example, for us in Europe, and this is a very interesting topic. For example, in Europe, it's not allowed for IT and law consulting and also for engineering to work in Russia or to work for Russia or to work for a company they have a location in Russia. So all of these regulations are one of these in compliance. And when you have a look, you have compliance regulations, and have a look into Wikipedia, you have compliance regulations in different topics. So we have it in law, also like in IT compliance, tax compliance, cross compliance. In agriculture, we have business compliance. So we have a lot of compliance topics. So it's fulfilling rules in every of these topics. And we are concentrating today into IT compliance and IT compliance. And a part of IT compliance is data privacy. And when we have a look, okay, what is a part of this compliance? What means it in a contract, in a contract or in a concrete view? And we have 100 and I collected in this moment 15,000 rules around the world where you can be compliant with Microsoft 365, and you sometimes you have to be compliant with this when you have company locations or you have employees in this country. You have to be compliant with this, and you see here a lot of regulations, and you see, for example, also the GDPR regulations talking about breach notifications. We have data retention regulations and retention record management. We have HIPAA, NIST regulations around the world we have to be compliant with. And when we have a deeper look into these requirements, also in data privacy, we have legal cases, we have the law, the data privacy law. We have authorities and orders that said, okay, how you have to fulfill the law, which actions you have to do. And we have certificates, the same for Microsoft 365. We have also certificates, which you can say, okay, with these certificates, you fulfill some of these requirements. And we have, for example, I talked about it, the IM and export rules, which are more and more today, and which we have to talk more and more about it. And when we have a look a little bit deeper, you see here some of the certificates which we have around the world. For example, that's the same what you know, the ISO certificates. For example, ISO 27001 for data centers. We have the data privacy ISO certificate. This is this one with 18 at the end. We have SOC, so security certificates around it, and we have industrial standards, for example, also in Europe, in UK, also in India. You have to fulfill. We have special things, for example, also for some industries, for example, for the car builder industries, they have the TSAC certificate. certificate, and we have regional standards, for example, in Germany, the IT Security Act or C5. And when we have a look into the world, here, I start to collect more and more and more. And you see here, for example, also India. The last thing I googled it. I have a short introduction to this, but the might why, as I looked at it, it's not a data privacy regulation, but you can fulfill here some more. I collected some that is also possible, and you have to fulfill in India, and also, and this is very interesting. For example, why, for example, you have to fulfill also data privacy in Europe when you have a company and the company have goods or consulting or services in Europe, and we have, for example, a company in IT consulting which works a lot of in Europe is Tata Consulting. Which comes from India, and when you say, okay, we have this company, they work for European citizen, you have to fulfill also GDPR. So in a full view of a worldwide regulation standards, you have to fulfill the most of them when you work worldwide for worldwide customers. And when we start and go focus more and more into data privacy, we have to look at the contracts. And we all have to look into contracts, and that's also why GDPR out of Europe influence also the contracts in India. It's, for example, the terms of use or the DPA, the data privacy addendum. We have a look into these at the first, and I know a lot of people out of IT said, okay, we don't read contracts. They are there, okay, we have to pay a price, and that's fine for me. But at the end, no, we have a look into the contracts because, for example, these product terms, and this is a new website since February, no, it's February this year, no, February last year, it's 21. That's the last one. We have a Word file for product terms. Now it's only a website. On this website, you can select the program. Program means you can select, for example, enterprise agreement, customer agreement, so different contract types. And we talk, for example, about CSP, the cloud solution provider. And then you can have a look, okay, for example, here at data privacy, online service privacy and security terms. And then you can have a look, okay, what this means for my product. And one part is also Azure, and one part is Microsoft 365, included all services. And this is very interesting, and we will talk today, and we have a look into these contracts at the end of this part of contracts, because I want to show you some interesting knowledge about Microsoft 365 apps, so Word, PowerPoint, and Excel, and hopefully you know it, but when not, you'll learn some more. So when we have a look into CSP architecture, for example, we have the typical CSP architecture, we have the customer, we have contracts with a Microsoft partner, which is a reseller of the licensing, and these partners have contracts with Microsoft, for example, the reseller agreement, and we have the general terms, the OSTs, the product terms, the SLA, and the DPA, which is closed with Microsoft and the customer in direct. We have M contracts, and this is very interesting for data privacy. We have these additional contracts which you can't get in a normal case. You need an EA, enterprise agreement, for example. Then you can talk with Microsoft and say, okay, I need additional contracts, for example, into data privacy, additional contracts that the data only proceed in one region, that Microsoft don't share the security keys out of Azure key vaults to, for example, NSA or to authorities. That is also additional contract. So you have a lot of additional contracts. Also, you have an additional contract that specified some of these DPA or product terms in a special version are responsible to your contract. So very interesting of these. In the CSP architecture, these M contracts and the individual contracts are not possible. For this, you need an EA contract or an MCA, a customer agreement, for example. And at the end, often you have a contract with your subsidiary. This is not out of data privacy reasons, only the reason that your local subsidiary get the customer into their portfolio and get the bonus from Microsoft. When we have a look deeper, for example, for Germany, we have this architecture of the contracts. We have the customer, which has access to Frankfurt and Berlin, to our local data centers. As a backup data center is Dublin also. We have contracts with the Microsoft partner, and we have contracts in our version to Microsoft Ireland. In your version, it's Microsoft India, and then Microsoft India to Microsoft Corporation. And Microsoft Corporation as a subsidiary or as a subcontractor. And when you have a look and said, okay, I want to see more subcontractors, and there's Europe, it's the same for India, you have a list, a subcontractor list, and this is very interesting for your data privacy officer and also for your IT security officer, because when you have a look into these list, and it will be released every 6 months around, you have to look which company worked there as a subcontractor. And when you find a company you don't want, what is your option? You have to delete your contract and move out of the Microsoft 365 cloud or move out of Azure. And but it's also possible to have a look at it. For example, here you see a lot of US companies working in the background of Microsoft 365. So not every service in Microsoft 365 and not every service in Azure is preceded by Microsoft itself. So it's preceded by a lot of companies in the background. For example, also the network is proceeding from another company. We have tools in Defender, for example, that's preceded, for example, for a Czech Republic company also. So Microsoft is buying a lot of companies and integrating into Microsoft, but has also companies as subcontractor. And when you see here, for example, and we found also some in India, it's the Azoiro Technologies. I don't know this company. Hopefully you know it. So you can verify, okay, this is a company from India. And what is my thing as a data privacy officer? I'm also a data privacy officer. I'm missing here one information. So what is not official, what you only see when you talk to the company or when you have a deeper look into the Microsoft Tech community. For example, I don't know Azero Technologies in India, customer and technical support. So out of my perspective, I think that's when you open a support ticket in Microsoft 365, this company is the first level support and will help you with your support ticket in the first time. What it's exactly, you don't see. You have only the functionality overview. But this is also for data privacy very interesting. So we see here, for example, for Europe, or you make it for India, you have your data centers, and at the end you have Microsoft Corporation, and you have a lot of subcontractors. And you find more and more of these data privacy information into the data privacy addendum. And I think it's time to have a look at it. And yes, a part of this is have a look into the contracts, and we aka dot ms dot slash DPA. You have the direct to Microsoft data protection addendum, and when we have a look at here, and we make first the other thing, we go to the product terms. We go to the product terms. We go to the product terms website. I want to show you something about Microsoft 365 apps or Power Platform. Also, it's very interesting. When you have a look here, for example, I choose the enterprise agreement for enterprise companies. You can choose, you see here, some more selected open licensing. You see here, MPSA is also often is MPSA, EA is a subcontractor of MPSA or MBSA, and then we have more, but we choose here the EA contract and the present day. You see here the product terms. And when you have a look, for example, to security and privacy, you see here, for example, which products are a part of the DPA. So you have the data privacy contracts for you. And the thing is that you don't have to decide between the countries. When you book a licensing and using Microsoft 365 in India, you have the same DPA if you use Microsoft 365 in Europe or in Germany. We have the same DPA with the same contract, the same general terms. And when we have a look at here, you see, for example, that some of the tools out of Microsoft 365, out of Azure, is not included into the DPA. So we don't have the full data privacy contracts, the full data privacy regulations fulfillment for these tools. And this, for example, Bing Maps, Bing Search, Bing services. That's why often when you talk with your data privacy officer, when you talk around the world with the data privacy officer, they said, okay, please delete the additional experience, please delete the Bing connection, because Bing connection isn't a part of the full set of data privacy contracts. And when we have a look a little bit more, we decide between core tools and non-core tools. In the meanwhile, non-core tools are also a part of DPA, but core tools have a better information. So Microsoft have to inform you 6 months before there's a change, there's an update. In non-core tools, they don't have to, but often they do it also to inform. But core tools are the data privacy best regulated, fulfill most of the data privacy requirements, are the best ones. And when you have a look here, for example, I want to show you a little bit. We go to Microsoft 365. Here's also Azure. We go to Microsoft 365 services. And when we have a look at the Microsoft 365 services here, you see there's Office 365 Client or Suite, Exchange Online, we see Microsoft and My Analytics, we see Forms, Bookings, Stream, include Microsoft Teams, including bookings, lists, and shifts. And this is very important. Some months before, I'm missing shifts, for example. We have Microsoft 365 Video. Okay, that's not available today, but it's also in the contracts. We have Casala Pro. Yeah, it's in the contracts to September next year. Then Casala, hopefully you know it, Casala will be deleted out of Microsoft 365, will not be available. And when we look a little bit more, there are services not included into the core service and are not included in the DPA, and that's the Microsoft 365 apps. So Word, PowerPoint, Excel, it's not included into the DPA contracts, also the PSTN services and all of this. So this is the same for Power Platform. When you have a Power Platform, only the core services are included. Non-included are the apps. So the first learning, yep, when we're using the core services, everything is fine. When we're using the apps, today it's okay, but we have a data privacy risk to use the clients. It's okay. What I mean is because we have a lot of technical organizatory measures to secure also the clients. For example, we are using Intune to create technical measures, for example, with the cloud policies, with Intune policies, only having access with Word when you are logged into your Microsoft 365 account, with MFA, and then you have access to your files and to your data. So that's very interesting to have a look at it, also for security reasons. And we are also here at the Security Summit, Cloud Security Summit. And when the Cloud Security Summit, it's often that you as a company, you don't go to Microsoft and make a security assessment. That's very expensive, and often you don't have the manpower or the skill set to make the security assessment. So you have a look, and you have a look into the certificates. So you have a look into the certificates and see here, okay, we have SOC 1 and SOC 2 for Office 365 services, for the compliance services, PureView, yeah, for PureView is also possible. And we have a look, for example, for Power Platform, but Power Platform, only the core services, not the apps. So who of you, raise your hand, raise your hand, we try it, raise your hand, who of you knows that only in Power Platform, the core service has SOC 1 and SOC 2, and not the client? No one, eh? That's typical. No one knows it before. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Often, okay, we don't have a look into the contract. Okay. Next time, please, next time have a look into the contract so that you learn more about these first step when we talked about data privacy in Microsoft 365. And the second part of data privacy in Microsoft 365 is Microsoft PureView. Microsoft PureView is a new product line for fulfilling data privacy regulations. And it's a part of it, it's a main part. We have also the Defender, the product line. We have Entra as a product line. All of these fulfilling together data privacy regulations. But PureView, or in the past, the Compliance Center, today it's a PureView Center. The PureView Center, you will get the tools you needed to fulfill. But when we have a look, what is PureView for me? PureView for me is to fulfilling regulations, including data privacy worldwide. And the first start often is, okay, we go to the portal, and the first start go into the compliance manager. The compliance manager, if you don't know anything about data privacy, the compliance manager helps you because there's an assessment for GDPR, there's an assessment for ISO certification. So you can start with these assessment and said, okay, this assessment set you have to fulfill, you have to configure something, you have to fulfill something. For example, start with a data assessment, data labeling. And when you start with this, you have the first steps of technical organizational measures or technical measures. And also there are some organizational measures that you fulfill data privacy, or that you fulfill, for example, GDPR when you start into the compliance manager. So for me, I have these hints: start with the compliance manager, start with data classification. E-discovery is a need. You have to use it, you have to test it, you have to try it. We have data lifecycle, so retention policies in the past is a wonderful tool, for example, for automatic deleting. Why you have automate delete data out of a data privacy perspective? It's very easy. Data privacy is the securing the personal data of a person. So, for example, secure my personal data, my name, my position, my GPS tracker, my when I'm sending emails and all of this, and at the end, that all of these data set, you can find me itself as a person, so my personal information, so protect my personal information into the proceeding process into Microsoft 365. And why is auto-deleting so important? Because when a file, when personal data is deleted, it's not a part of a data privacy regulation. So it's very cool that you have a deleting life cycle. So the first hint is, when you start with Microsoft 365, please start also with retention policies, using retention policies, retention label to delete data. For example, it's a very cool discussion, and that's also what I ask you if you start and talk about Microsoft Teams chat, for example. I have the first discussions every time, how long we need these chats in channel and one-to-one. Often we said, okay, for channels, we need it longer, because in channels we are talking about products, we are talking about essential information for the company. So, for example, the channel chats, we want to beware, or we want to protect for the time the teams is living, so we don't make a retention policy for the team itself. Maybe we make a retention policy for 10 years, for example, on a team, or 6 years. That's fine. But very interesting is the one-to-one chat. I have companies also worldwide, also located in India. They said, okay, we delete one-to-one chats after 6 months. Or I have one company, they delete after 30 days. For example, what's for you? Your company, is you deleting Teams chats one-to-one? Raise your hand or say yes or no to the chat. Are you here? Okay, no one. Okay, no one deleting Teams chats. Okay, it's a good hint for data privacy regulation. Please, for example, 6 months. 6 months is okay for one-to-one chat, because one-to-one chat are temporary chats in Microsoft Teams. So I have insurance companies and finance companies that said, okay, after 30 days, we delete every chat. For channel messages, we beware the deletion for 6 years, for example, or for 10 years to fulfill the regulations. And when we have a look at here, here you see the pure view center where you can fulfill that or fulfill the most of the data privacy regulations. And when we have a look into the life cycle of features and tools of Microsoft PureView, you see here we are starting with retention tags and retention policies. Can you remember in which tool it was? We're starting not with SharePoint Server, with Exchange Server. So in the first Exchange servers, we see retention tags and retention policies to delete automatically, for example, the trash folder in your mailbox, to deleting automatically or to move automatically email objects into the online archive or the archive, or using journaling or using connectors, for example, with VM and all of this, to bringing some into the backup storage. And we have S-MIME, PGP, OpenPGP gateways to encrypt mail. So every of these is data privacy. Data privacy, the most for email, we're talking about end-to-end encryption. So end-to-end encryption from client to client, so that no one can read your message, no one can proceed your personal data, only you, and is it confidential for this sending process. So end-to-end encryption. Then we go to the compliance center. We have compliance and security center. Then we have compliance and security center separated. And we have a look a little bit more. Currently, we have now the Microsoft PureView Center, the Defender Center. So from security and compliance together, we selected to compliance and security center. And now we have the new PureView and Defender Center. So for the names, it's a little bit confusing sometimes. And when we have a look more into the tools, and I choose these Exchange example because I'm also a speaker of some Exchange Airlift for Microsoft Corp, and this was also one of my examples. I repeated it here because when you have a look here, you created your retention tags and retention policies. But when you have a look into the Microsoft PureView Center, it calls also retention policy. So we have the same name for two different tool sets, and this is a little bit confusing. So Microsoft is saying, okay, in the future, everything is Microsoft PureView. So in the future, they will moving these retention tags and policies from Exchange Server into the Microsoft PureView Center. So everything is switching and moving to Microsoft PureView. And this is a basement for fulfillment of data privacy and compliance itself. And you see it here, and this is very interesting information. When we are working with data privacy regulations, for example, deleting Teams chats, there was an example for some slides before, deleting Teams chats. All of these items of Teams chats are stored in the Exchange mailbox in a folder. So we have these deleting of Teams chats, e-discovery of Teams chats. So e-discovery is when we have a look, for example, in GDPR, you have the right that you get a copy of your personal data. So we need e-discovery, for example, or the new Priva tool, and we have in some minutes we talked also about a little about Priva, the new privacy management set in Microsoft 365. That's very interesting that these information are stored in the Exchange mailbox, Exchange online mailbox. And in this mailbox, you can store it, you can delete it. And yes, for Teams chats are in a Cosmos DB and then will synchronize to the mailbox. No sync back. So when you delete the item, it will also store it into the Cosmos DB. But when you use a retention policy set, okay, it will be deleted, then it also will be deleted at the end in the Cosmos DB. So you can control your Microsoft Teams chats, for example. Also, you can use PowerShell to do this. You can use a Microsoft Graph. You can house also customer key for Microsoft Exchange Server, for SharePoint Server. And when we have a look into the architecture of fulfilling data privacy in Microsoft 365 with PureView tools, you see it here. Starting with PureView audit logs, customer key. Customer key is you bring your own key to encrypt the application Exchange, SharePoint, Teams. It's a regulation out of the data privacy authorities, for example, for insurance companies and finance companies in Europe. I don't know it exactly in India. That's your part. You can help me. But in Europe, it's standard requirement you have to fulfill. You have to implement customer key. Then e-discovery. E-discovery to find personal data in your tenant. Then Microsoft Information Protection and Data Lifecycle for data classification. So with data classification, you can bring more technical and organizational measures to protect personal data in Microsoft 365. So key is data classification. Every time data classification. And for me, and this is also, the security summit. And we hear in the session before about Defender and all of this. Thank you, Kamesh. And that was very interesting. For example, you have a data breach. This is a security issue. So you said, okay, we need new rules. We need new, for example, Defender forensic to find, okay, where's the leak? Do we have, for example, an identity issue? So someone with a phishing attack gets the identity, and with the identity, the user, for example, start to copying data. Then, and that's for me, compliance before security tools, you need data classification, because with compliance, you can find the gap, you can close the gap, you can find the attacker, you can proceed and take away the attacker to your Microsoft 365 environment. But when something happened, you need compliance, you need the data classification, because with data classification, you can say, okay, which data is copied, how much data is copied, is it very confidential data? Is it which personal data, which class of personal data will be copied to another drive? This only you can say it when you have data classification, or you can say it very fast then. So you can use these architecture, you can use these tools, and I put it in this row that you start, and let's use my pen. You can start this way. So start with audit logs, customer key, then with pure view, with data lifecycle, and then start with DLP. And at the end, you put these ones. So this is 4 and this is 5. For me, so these are the steps. Start with audit logs, customer key, e-discovery, then data classification, then DLP, then insider risk, communication compliance, and information barriers. Or often information barriers is also part of this step. That's a little bit for every company, but this is the steps for fulfilling data privacy or fulfilling also other compliance regulations. And at the end, we have Microsoft Priva. We will talk also about Priva. And at the end, when we have a look a little bit more into the architecture, so open everything of this. No, go back. We see here the architecture of technical measures to fulfill data privacy. We have the end-to-end encryption, and go back to my laser pointer. We have the end-to-end encryption here for sending emails. We have end-to-end encryption in Microsoft Teams for one-to-one chats. In the future, we will see it also for Teams meetings. We have the DLP policies. We have customer key. We have data classification, data lifecycle, also with information protection. We have e-discovery to extract data to take a legal hold on it, and e-discovery is no archive. No, there's only legal hold. And we have the customer logbox, and also these additional tools, and the privacy manager itself, it's called Priva. We will have a look in the next minutes to Priva, a little bit deep dive. If you have some special questions to these tools, we can go a little bit deep dive if you want. If not, I will go a little bit forward because we want to talk also a little bit about Priva in the last minute. So I go forward. If you have any questions, you will get the slides, and you see it here. I have for every tool also a slide. You will get it, so you have a little bit of a knowledge base about all of these tools. And what I want to talk at the end is Microsoft Priva. Microsoft Priva is the new data privacy management, not R. So data privacy management. But wait. I will correct it. Where is the R instead of the T? Let's have a look. Wait, here. That's fine. In PowerPoint, you can correct these directly. So privacy management is Microsoft Priva. Microsoft Priva has is very new, is starting this year. You can do some of the features before, for example, with e-discovery, with DLP. Priva is also using sensitive information types and data classification. So before you use Priva, please use data classification. And with data classification, then use Priva as on top. Microsoft Priva is an additional licensing to E5, to Microsoft 365 E5. You have additional licensing, and you have two licensings. In Priva, you have the risk management and you have the subject rights request. Darf ich also T? No, I want to collect. Oh, okay, I'm going to do it now. And Microsoft requests. Okay, there's it. Double T. Okay, it's because of the picture. So we have the starter subject request. So we have two licensing. The first licensing, the risk policies. You have to licensing every user in your company. So $4.20, $4 around $4 around for every user. And subject requests is only for subject requests. You buy $5 or $5 or 10 data subject requests, and you have around $1,500 for the subject request. So for so we have around $200 for a subject request. What means when you have a look into the compliance center, you see here on the right side here that is advertising for Microsoft Priva. Please using Microsoft Priva for more data privacy management. For me, yes, Priva is fine for data privacy, but it's not the first step. First step is Compliance Manager and the other tools I show you before. Data classification, DLP, using auto labeling, for example, and then parallel or shortly behind, you have to implement this, starting then with Microsoft Priva. Why? I will explain you in the next minutes. At Microsoft Priva, you have a test phase, 30 days. You can extract it to 90 days. You can test Microsoft Priva in your Microsoft 365 environment. And here you see my privacy management overview. So overview means you have also the risk policies and you have the subject request or the subject request reports. You see here, I tested it a little bit, and you see here I have two request reports. They are overdue, so they for GDPR, for example, also in the India, you have some days, for example, 30 days, or for us it's 3 months. To fulfill the regulations, you can extract for 30 days, you can extract it, or 4 weeks, and then you can restrict it a little bit. And when you need too long time, it will be red, so you are overdue. You have to create a report and give the personal data, for example, to the people they requested it. You have information about which personal data is found in your organization. Yes, is based only on information types. So if you have a definition of personal data in Europe or better out of GDPR, there's more than information types. So more of these are personal data, and it's very difficult. And I have a lot of discussion with the product group, a lot of discussion with companies to mark every personal data in your environment. So it's only close to, so you can mark only 80%, because when you said, okay, I want to mark 100% of personal data, you have to mark every data in your tenant, because when you bring data together, it can be a personal data at the end. So when you have data, for example, there's a phone is registered in your Azure AD. As a phone is registered, that's no personal data, but every phone is comparing or is connecting to people. So when the phone is moving to US, is moving from Europe to India, this is a personal data. So yeah, it's very heavy to mark every personal data. But here you try this, or Microsoft's trying this with go back, is trying this with the sensitive information type. So we have these to Microsoft Priva management, so privacy management risk. On the one hand, we have the personal data in your environment. We have policies who's moving personal data. We have policies so data minimization, so what I said, deleting data automatically. And we have trainings for employees to fulfill the regulations. On the other side, we have subject requests. The subject request is, for example, I go to your company and said, okay, my name is Rafael, I'm from Europe, I have GDPR rights and I want my data, or I want information how you proceed my personal data. And I want to extract my personal data. Then you can use the subject request management. For licensing, I said to you, there are 2 licenses, so you can test it 9 days for free, and it's only included into the enterprise plan. So if you want to have this, you need one enterprise plan. Hopefully in the future, it will be also available for the premium licensing, also for edu licensing. We will see it. Currently, it's only for the enterprise tenants. We have also a test playbook. This is really cool. I worked a little bit with the Priva team to create this. So with the test playbook, you can use the licensing. You can test what you can do. And when we have a deeper look into the licensing, that's a little bit what you can do. So privacy management, most of the companies starting with a privacy management. I have also some companies, they're starting with a subject request. And yes, the update and phase the update in the last months is you can use it also in education. So enterprise plans and education plans is possible. So if you want to have a management, you have to need, and this is my recommendation for data privacy management in Microsoft 365, you need the contracts, you need risk-based assessment, then you need the compliance E5 licensing or additional licensing, and in the best case also Priva and both of Priva, so that's very easier to fulfill the requirements. So Priva subject request you see here, I make a screenshot for you out of the licensing. You see here, you pay around that's euros. Yeah, that's dollar, and this is the euros. Yeah, you pay around 1,700 for the add-on license per year. You have 10 requests included, so they collected when you have 50 requests, you have to pay 10,000. This is the IT system for fulfill the requirement. You can make it manually, but when you count it and said, okay, I want to make it manually because this is too expensive for me, you have to count the money for the people they make manually, and then you said, okay, for $200 or for $200, you have to think for you how long I can pay people, or I can pay the IT compliance manager how long they need to extract all the personal data, how long they need, and if it's better to pay for Microsoft that they make it automatically. That's a little bit thinking you have to think about it. At the end, Microsoft Priva, the risk management tools, you pay for $4.20 for this per user, so around $50 per year. And with this, you can create the policies. And so let's have a little bit deeper look into the policies. And this is what I like a lot. When you have data classification and when you start with information sensitive types, then you go to Microsoft Priva and start with policies. You have policy templates. You can see basic information, personal data, so personal data in your environment. You can monitor it. You can put a scope on different users and groups. For example, you have a group working in Europe, you have a group working in India, you have a group working in China, you have a group working in Australia, in Brazil, in Turkey, in the USA. You can make a scope of it. You can make a location scope and say, okay, which data will be transferred. Currently, only for multi-geo, that's important information. This data transfer policy is only working today when you have a multi-geo tenant. If you have only one tenant, the policy don't work. So if you have one tenant and, for example, the people work in US, the tenant is in Europe, the policy don't work because the tenant is only in Europe and it only see events between tenants or between SharePoint environments. So hopefully in the future, the policy will show every transfer. But we will see in SharePoint, we will get it. It was an announcement on Ignite. We will see it in the future with Priva and also in the SharePoint Admin Center, because SharePoint Admin Center will get these policies. So really cool. And yes, I have only 2 slides.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Okay, continue.
I see the log. I see the clock, so only 2 slides. Because I want to show only these principles of policies. That's the last 2 slides. So if you see here, you have overlay, transition, transmission, and minimization policies. I talked to you, transmission policy working best when you have a multi cloud environment. Overlay and minimization works today. That's really cool. And the last one here, when you can create these policies. And when you do this, and this is what I like, is you see here these data subject rights. So we have the policies. That is one part. Please use overlay, minimization, and try transition. You can try it for 90 days. It's working for SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. For the core tools, not for Kaisala, for Sway, and all this. So only for the core tools. It's not the best one, but the Priva team said they will rise it up to the other tools. And on the other side, when you have these policies, and the other tool is the subject request, and you see here a little bit more information about subject request. You have the right to access. You have the portable data and the right to be forgotten. So if it's deleted, you can say for data portability, you get from Dave the request, okay, I want my data. Then you recognized Dave, said, okay, I make a new case. It's like an e-discovery case. You make a case, then you flag, okay, what we need for personal data from him. Then you extract, and you can extract and collect these data. And at the end, you have also the option to get these data automatically, also with Power Automate, to Dave back. So that's really cool that you have this fulfillment process to fulfill personal or to manage your privacy in Microsoft 365. And what I do also for you, and now I don't want to talk about it, I bring all of the Ignite news of the tools into the slide deck. So at the end, you have around 80 slides. You can have a look also at the news, for example, for the life cycle of SharePoint sites with the new policy, which fulfills also data privacy, because when it deleted, it's not proceed. And at the end, I will say thank you. Thank you much to your sponsors. Thank you very much to the organization team. Thank you very much here for my moderator, Kalesh. Thank you very much. That you are here, that we communicate, that we know, okay, here is your session, when is your session, all of this. So thank you very much. Hopefully you learned a lot. And yes, we have a contract part in this session. This is also a very important thing to learn about data privacy and Microsoft 365. And I'm finished.
Okay, I have one question. Who in the organization decides about this retention period, whether it is 90 days, 60 days, or whatever days?
That's a very, and I see it for here for data lifecycle. You can do it also. And you mean retention? Wait. Retention is a very good one. Moving to my slide, where's data loss prevention, retention, data lifecycle. Who of it is deciding? Often you go and you are the IT department, and often the department, for example, marketing, HR said, okay, the IT decide. That's wrong. The IT is only the internal consulting who configure Microsoft PureView Data Lifecycle. Who decide? Decide is the department, is HR department, the data privacy officer, compliance officer. But in reality, and I think that's the same for you, in reality, the compliance officer and the IT decide. And at the end, the IT decide. I know that's not optimal, but yeah, at the end, the IT decide. But the best one is the department, HR department or accounting has to decide, because they know the periods.
Okay. Does this apply on social media applications like Twitter, LinkedIn? Do they also have these policies?
Correct. This is also possible if you use the Microsoft Compliance Center. and we can go very fast to the compliance center. I say compliance center. Oh, preview center. That's also possible. You talked about Slack, Twitter, WhatsApp. That's also possible. You can edit, and this is more and more. 96 now. Oh, last week it was 50. You can bring, for example, what you have said, Slack and WhatsApp. You
Twitter.
can
Yeah.
bring Twitter. Twitter is also possible here. There are open source and also Veritas technologies. You can connect your Twitter and can bring the Twitter information to the Microsoft Preview Center. It will be stored in your default tenant region. That's very interesting, and will be also stored in the mailbox. And then you can use the data privacy management. You can use communication compliance also for these data you import into the Microsoft Compliance Center. But only these 69 connectors are possible today.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No problem. That's why I'm here. And more questions? No one. It's which time of the day is it in
It
India?
is
It's evening,
4:30
or?
p.m. now. Yeah, 4:30
Ah,
p.m.
4:30 p.m. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's time for cake and coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there are no questions, thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me about all of these. I was in Redmond the last 2 weeks. So if you want to contact me, send me an email, erkölner@erkölner.com, or Google me, send me Twitter, use Twitter, or Signal. Signal is also possible. Signal, Twitter, LinkedIn, Teams. Use these mail address is also my team address. I configured my tenant very open, so you can connect me, you can send me an email. And yes, this is also a hard data privacy discussion. If you delete, you have to delete that someone out of your organization see your status. So red, no, you know your status in Teams, red, green, yellow. For me, yes, you can make reverse engineering, but at the end, stay on your foot. It's okay. Also, okay, hopefully you know
Yeah.
this discussion. Yeah, it's okay. Often the working council don't want it in Germany when we deleted it. But for me, as a personal, I said every of you can decide to show your status in Teams, green, yellow, red, offline. So if you don't want it, go offline.
Okay.
So that's fine for me.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you for the session.
So
Our next speaker is already here, so we will end this talk and we will move to the next speaker, Chris, who will be talking on policy as version code.
very interesting.